Just a few years ago, the Department of Defense established a public office to take in and analyze UFO sightings. To change the stigma around UFOs, the office is now calling them UAPs, or Unidentified Anomalous Phenomena. The head of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, John Koslowski, is speaking publicly on how they're debunking UAP videos.
To date, AARO has not discovered any verifiable evidence of extraterrestrial beings, activity, or technology.
John Koslowski joins me now to talk about why the U.S. government is involved with UAP sightings. John, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
There's been a public fascination with UFOs really ever since Roswell. You're a man of science and have shown how the scientific method can explain some UAP sightings. What about the ones that haven't been explained?
In our holdings, for example, we have a little over 1,800 cases. Only about 2% of those have sufficient scientific evidence that we can conduct a thorough investigation, and after that investigation still remain anomalous. We have about 57% of our cases don't have sufficient evidence to conduct that kind of scientific inquiry. So there's an awful lot of the observations that just don't have the fidelity of information that's needed to answer those questions.
You've said before that satellites can actually be mistaken for UAPs. How does that happen? And is it happening more often these days?
It is happening more often. So there's a phenomenon called satellite flaring. The satellite will appear to be a star that's moving much faster than we would naturally expect a star or a planet to be moving. So that looks pretty anomalous. But what has become more common recently are the satellite trains from some of these mega constellations, where dozens of satellites are launched all at once.
At liftoff.
And as part of their process to go into their final orbit, those few dozen satellites will all be in a line, traversing the sky at the same time, and either will show up bright just before sunrise or just after sunset, moving across the sky, and then they slowly disappear one by one. It looks pretty unusual.
Can you talk about the process that goes into studying these sightings? Is there a step-by-step checklist or this scientific process you go through in the detective work?
Yeah, there is a process. We have a cookbook, essentially. We follow the recipe for how to do the analysis. First step is look at the data, see if there's an obvious explanation. Sometimes our narratives, for example, will state in the narrative, we think it's a balloon and it behaved like a balloon. Okay, well, then it's probably a balloon. But most times it's not that simple. So then we will look for enriching data. And we have a checklist of several dozen places where we'll go look for, say, FAA radar, imagery from other cameras that might have been in the environment, just any data source that could enrich the narrative or the video that is provided from that event.
How do you make sure that the data you're getting is high enough quality to actually evaluate?
Well, this is one of the struggles that not just our office, but I think UAP investigators in general have, is rarely are we the ones collecting the data. So although AARO does have a few scientific test beds where we are collecting some radar and imagery, the vast majority of our data is coming in from partners, and we are limited by the capabilities of their sensors. Add on top of that, those partners have jobs that they're trying to conduct at the time that they're observing those UAP. The primary source of our data is from the DoD and from the FAA. We have steady reporting from both of those organizations. We're opening up a portal, hopefully in the coming months, to allow the public to report to us. And so we're looking forward to getting more data from them, as well as local and state law enforcement. And then for the cases where it looks to be truly anomalous, we will then send it off to our scientific and intelligence partners for a very thorough analysis that generally takes on the order of months. And sometimes we don't even close those cases. We have to sort of keep them on the shelf, always looking for additional data to enrich them because the phenomenon are so perplexing. Some of our other cases, our partners have to invent new methodologies for conducting the analysis because of the way they have to account for certain weather phenomenon. So a lot of the really high-end modern enhancement techniques are difficult to apply to our data sets.
Astronomers just announced they found possible chemical signatures of life in a nearby solar system. Do you think we're alone in the universe?
I personally don't think we're alone in the universe. I think that's a very exciting study that was recently done. I have to say that there's a long way to go between the optical signature of that spectra to whether or not life has found its way from the extraterrestrial source to Earth. But no, I don't think we're alone.
John Koslowski, head of the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, thank you so much for speaking with us.
Thank you very much.